Now, according to reports, the United States is preparing to file criminal charges over Iran's alleged hack and leak attacks against Donald Trump's presidential campaign. The probe suggests that both Trump and the Biden-Harris campaigns were targeted by an online account with links to the Iranian government. Reports say that charges could be filed in just a few days. This comes a week after the US sanctioned Russian media executives on election meddling charges.
And we're going to make America great again.
The reign of corrupt Washington establishment will be over and America will be a...
The U.S. Justice Department is preparing to file criminal charges over Iran's alleged hack and leak attack against Donald Trump's presidential campaign. According to reports, the FBI probe has focused on email account identification only as Robert. The account contacted American reporters and shared campaign documents it falsely claimed to have obtained while working with the Trump campaign.
Great again.
The reign of corrupt Washington establishment...
Investigation into the case has revealed that Robert was acting on behalf of the Iranian government in offering data files stolen from Trump's advisors, email accounts to news organizations. Criminal charges could be filed within a few days, according to reports. The probe says that it is not just the Trump campaign that has been targeted, as there was an attempted breach of the Biden-Harris campaign as well. Accusations of election meddling have been volleying across the globe for years. Just a few days ago, the US had charged and sanctioned Russian state media executives as it accused Moscow of a widespread campaign to interfere with the presidential election. The latest accusations highlight how deep these operations run. Vishal Vivek reports for NDTV World. Bureau Report.
Let's take a closer look at this story now. We're joined by cyber threat analyst Alexis Ahmed. Alexis, thanks very much for your time this morning. Let's take a deeper dive into what we just heard there. Given everything that's happening with the Israel-Gaza war, I don't think really we should be too surprised by this, right? Given Iran's support for Hamas with military aid and training. But what's the end game here, I'm wondering, for Iran? Most sympathy towards the Palestinian cause, so divisions here in the United States. What's your take?
Well, thank you for having me. I think a lot of this can be attributed to a dislike or a lack of favor for a potential Donald Trump presidency, given his stance or foreign policy in relation to Iran. And I think a lot of this or the activities that were performed were sort of part of a larger plan to try and disrupt the Republican presidential campaign. And one of these examples, based on the files that were leaked as a result of this hack, were or seemed to point towards that, by releasing a dossier on Donald Trump's vice presidential pick that was primarily aimed or geared to sort of shift the attention to, the vetting process or the lack thereof or therein of a process behind it. And from my perspective, this is something that, again, always repeats itself, whether it be, Russian state-backed threat actors, or now, in this case, Iranian threat actors. I think there seems to be a push, or the objective seems to be to cause chaos or to disgruntle, harmony, if that makes sense.
Right. Talking about that dossier on J.D. Vance that the hackers or this guy called Robert sent to media outlets like Washington Times, New York Post, and Politico. That's one aspect of it. I know that we don't have too many other details. Are you hearing what else those emails said?
Well, the emails, again, based on what was revealed by Politico, it appears to be, or there appears to be a series of them that, again, we don't have any specifics of, but I would assume, based on, again, the reports released by Microsoft on the same, as well as Google's threat intelligence team, that they are primarily to do with the internal workings of the campaigns themselves. There were, as you mentioned, attempts to target, the Democratic campaign. However, it doesn't look like those were successful. So I would assume that the documents or files are really pertinent to the campaign itself, as opposed to sort of a wider scope.
Right, we're also joined by Jake Novak. He's a political analyst. He's also joining us live now, right here on US Election Watch. Thanks very much, Jake, for coming on the show. Jake, are we talking about here about what happened with those likely charges that are coming through with Iran and the emails that went out to Politico, Washington Times, and the Washington Post and New York Times? Are you surprised by Iran really here stepping up their game as far as trying to disrupt the US elections go?
No, I'm not surprised at all. Iran has a tremendous amount riding on the result of this election. You know, we can argue here in America about how there's not much difference sometimes between the candidates, but there can be no argument in Iran. Donald Trump is an almost 100% certainty will reimpose sanctions on Iran, will start to choke off the financial pipeline and cash flow to Iran if he's elected. That's not even in question. There's no doubt that that will happen. There are some other things that he's promised that certainly are in doubt, but that's not one of them. So Iran absolutely has a lot riding on this election, and it's more than just about an initial policy. There are many people in the Biden administration, in the State Department, holdovers from the Obama administration, who are absolutely sympathetic to Iran, and I believe there are some that are even working for Iran. So that could actually, now they may find some way to survive under a Trump administration, but of course their chances of surviving in office in whatever position they have in the bureaucracy would be much lower if Trump is elected. So I'm not surprised, and I think it's probably more extensive than we know, their efforts to try to eliminate him from the campaign.
Jake, I know details are still sketchy, but who is likely to be charged here? In the past, we've seen US officials name and shame, so to speak, hackers from China or Russia. So are there likely to be charges against people like far away from US shores, in Iran, right here in the United States? Any idea on what we should expect?
Yeah, I mean, the United States has already sanctioned a lot of the leaders, for example, the IRGC and some of the internal folks in the Iranian regime. You know, one thing people need to understand about Iran really only produces one thing. The regime in Iran only produces one thing, and that is foreign proxy or foreign terror operations. That's their entire policy. That's why they're so desperate to save Hamas and Hezbollah, because if those proxy armies fail, then it's almost as if their entire regime's reason to exist fails. And so this is another part of their regime, part of the same policy, which is to start terror throughout other parts of the world, attack other areas. That's why, for example, they will attack civilian populations in different countries when they can't effectively attack a military. For example, in Israel, that's why they targeted in Argentina 30 years ago the Jewish centers in Argentina, who were obviously less defended than the Israeli military. So they do stuff like this. This is their entire infrastructure. So I think you'll see leaders of the IRGC getting named. You know, the United States does this all the time. We indict them here in the United States. We know it doesn't mean anything, but as far as actually getting them to a court of law, we don't expect that. But what it does is it gives the United States military and the United States intelligence services the legal groundwork so that they can start targeting them in different ways. And basically, you know, we still have rules, even though it seems like we're just making them up as we go along. Before we go after someone, either in our intelligence services or in a commando raid or a drone strike, there has to be something on the law books that makes that legal. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to indict them in absentia. They're going to sanction them in absentia. And that will lead to, hopefully, some kind of action against them to stop them from any further attacks or plans to attack the United States.
Right, between the two here, Iran, and we've seen Russia as well. Last week, the US charged two employees of RT, a Russian state media company. They allegedly funneled $10 million to a US content creation company to put out those social media videos with messages favoring Russian interests. Really want to ask you, Alexis, and I'll come to Jake as well, who is the bigger problem here, Iran or for that matter, Russia?
Well, I think from my perspective, and having analyzed, previous attacks in previous election cycles, uh, Iran's campaign, at least insofar as this leak is concerned or hack, seems to align very closely to what the GRU or FSB groups had done in 2016 with hacking into the DNC. And so, if you actually study a timeline of events, it pretty much mirrors very closely to that campaign, as well as their objectives. So I think that there probably is
Right.
some or a form of collusion between the two in terms of strategizing and maybe even coming up with a synthesis of techniques, if that makes sense.
Thanks very much. Absolutely run out of time here, Jake. We would have loved to come to you, but potentially next time on a similar topic. Thanks very much for your time there. That's Jake Novak and Alexis Ahmed joining us here on US Election Watch.